Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into one of the most alarming and fast developing crises unfolding in the Middle East. Tehran, the capital of Iran, is now facing a water emergency that experts are calling the most severe in the country's history. The situation has escalated so quickly that government officials are openly discussing partial or even full evacuations of major districts. Millions of people may be forced to leave their homes, and the crisis is sending shockwaves through the entire region. In today's video, we're breaking down exactly what happened, why Tehran suddenly ran out of water, how the government is responding, and what this means for Iran's future stability. For years, analysts warned that Iran was sitting on a ticking time bomb when it came to water management. Climate change, relentless drought, poor infrastructure, and decades of mismanagement combined into a perfect storm. But even those warnings did not fully capture just how quickly the crisis could hit. Over the past few weeks, water levels in the capital's main reservoirs dropped dramatically. What was once considered a manageable shortage suddenly transformed into a full-blown emergency. The suddenness of the situation is what shocked everyone. One moment, authorities were asking for reduced water consumption. The next, entire neighborhoods were reporting dry taps, and emergency water trucks were being sent in. Videos began circulating online, showing people carrying buckets, arguing over limited supplies, and lining up at makeshift water distribution points. Tehran, a metropolitan area with over 10 million residents, is simply not built to function without water for even a short period. The crisis did not appear overnight. For decades, Iran's water supply has been stretched thin. The country receives far less rainfall than it used to. Snowpacks in the Zagros Mountains, which feed Iran's rivers and reservoirs, have declined significantly. At the same time, Iran's population has grown, cities have expanded, and agricultural demands have skyrocketed. Groundwater has been pumped out much faster than it can replenish, leaving vast parts of the country with sinking land and collapsing aquifers. Tehran sits at the center of this fragile system, depending heavily on water sources that are now failing. But what pushed this situation from serious to catastrophic were the recent heat waves and infrastructure failures. Over the past summer and fall, Tehran experienced record-breaking temperatures that dried up water sources at an unprecedented rate. On top of that, aging pipelines and dams, many built decades ago, have not been properly maintained. Several major leaks were discovered only after water pressure dropped dramatically. By then, it was already too late to prevent the crisis. Authorities initially tried to downplay the situation, insisting that the shortages were temporary and would be resolved quickly. But internal government reports, which began leaking online, painted a far more alarming picture. They showed that several reservoirs feeding Tehran were at less than 10% capacity. In some areas, the levels were so low that water pumps could no longer operate. The government was forced to acknowledge the severity of the problem and issue public warnings. That is when the word evacuation first appeared in official statements, and the entire country went into shock. Evacuating parts of Tehran is not a simple task. We're talking about one of the largest cities in the Middle East. Moving even a fraction of its population would be a monumental challenge, requiring massive logistical preparation. Yet officials warned that if water supplies could not be restored quickly, people living in the hardest hit zones would have to relocate temporarily or even permanently. The idea that an entire capital city could face evacuation due to lack of water is almost unthinkable. But that is exactly the scenario Iran is now confronting. International experts have already compared Tehran's situation to crises that hit places like Cape Town, South Africa, when it nearly reached day zero. The difference is scale. Tehran is larger, denser, and more vulnerable, and unlike Cape Town, which was eventually able to avoid disaster through strict emergency measures, Tehran has far fewer options available. As panic began to spread among residents, the government rushed to deploy water tankers, but these measures only helped temporarily. The demand far outweighed the supply. People began storing water in bottles, buckets, and whatever containers they could find. Shops ran out of bottled water within hours. Prices skyrocketed on the black market. Videos on social media showed tense confrontations at distribution sites as desperate residents struggled to secure enough water for their families. At the same time, the crisis exposed deep political tensions within Iran. Critics accused the government of ignoring years of warnings from environmental experts. They pointed to poor water management, misallocation of resources, and the prioritization of large agricultural projects over urban needs. Some blamed the construction of countless dams across the country, which disrupted natural water flow and caused further shortages downstream. Others argued that corruption and lack of maintenance played a major role. International observers are also watching closely because the stability of Iran is deeply tied to regional politics. Water shortages have already triggered protests in several Iranian provinces over the past decade. Now, with the capital itself facing potential evacuation, the risk of mass unrest has increased dramatically. The government has deployed additional security forces to Tehran, anticipating possible demonstrations if the situation worsens. The economic impact is also severe. Businesses are struggling to operate without reliable water supplies. Factories have been temporarily shut down. Hospitals are rationing water to maintain essential services. Schools have closed in affected areas. Public transportation systems are facing disruptions. Every aspect of daily life is being affected by the shortage. As the crisis deepened, Iran turned to emergency engineering solutions. Teams were dispatched to repair leaks, drill new wells, and redirect water from nearby provinces. But many of these measures are short-term fixes rather than long-term solutions. Experts warn that the aquifers around Tehran are already overexploited. Drilling new wells could cause the ground to sink even more, leading to dangerous land subsidence. Some areas of Tehran have already experienced sinking by several centimeters per year, and the problem is accelerating. The government also attempted to negotiate with neighboring regions to divert water to Tehran. However, this sparked anger among residents of those provinces, who are also suffering from shortages. Iran's internal water politics have become extremely heated, with local leaders accusing national authorities of sacrificing rural areas to save the capital. Meanwhile, climate scientists say that Tehran's crisis is a warning sign for many other cities around the world. As temperatures rise and rainfall becomes more unpredictable, regions that rely heavily on snowmelt and seasonal water flow will face growing stress. Tehran may be the first major capital to approach evacuation due to water loss, but if global trends continue, it may not be the last. Inside Tehran, the emotional toll on residents is overwhelming. Families fear they may have to leave their homes behind. Businesses worry about bankruptcy. Students wonder if their schools will reopen. Parents wait in long lines for water, not knowing how long the supplies will last. Many express frustration that the situation could have been prevented with better planning and transparency. The government has tried to reassure the public by announcing new emergency projects, including large water, for pipelines from northern regions. But these projects will take months or even years to complete. Meanwhile, the current crisis demands immediate solutions. Officials are now debating the possibility of implementing strict water rationing, limiting the amount each household can use per day. Some propose rotating water shutdowns across neighborhoods, giving each district only a few hours of supply per day. This kind of rationing would be extremely difficult for a city the size of Tehran. It could also spark unrest if certain areas feel they are receiving less than others. Already, social media is filled with complaints and accusations of unfair distribution. People are posting videos showing water flowing in one district while another district remains dry for days. International aid agencies have offered assistance, but Iran's political tensions with the West complicate foreign involvement. The government has been reluctant to accept help, fearing it would signal weakness or open the door to external influence. Still, behind the scenes, Iran is in communication with several countries that have experience in large-scale water management. The crisis has also ignited discussions about Iran's long-term future. Without major reforms to its water policy, the country could face repeated disasters. Some experts argue that Iran must drastically reduce water-intensive agriculture, which consumes more than 85% of the national supply. Others believe the country must invest heavily in desalination plants along the Persian Gulf, despite the enormous cost. There is also a growing push for technological modernization, including recycling wastewater and developing more efficient irrigation methods. One of the most emotionally charged debates centers around Tehran's population. Some officials quietly argue that the city is simply too large to sustain in a water-scarce era. They propose relocating parts of the population to smaller cities with better water access, but such plans would be incredibly expensive, politically risky, and deeply unpopular. Most Iranians see Tehran not just as a city, but as the heart of the country. As days pass, people are closely watching whether rainfall or snowmelt will offer relief. But meteorologists warn that the coming months will likely remain dry. Even if there is some precipitation, it will not be enough to refill depleted reservoirs. Iran's climate has changed too dramatically, and the infrastructure is too damaged for a quick recovery. Families are preparing for the worst, storing supplies, filling containers, and planning backup options. Community groups have organized water sharing networks to help the elderly and vulnerable. Some wealthier families have temporarily relocated to northern provinces where water supplies are more stable. But most residents do not have the means to move, leaving them at the mercy of government decisions. As the crisis continues, the world is watching Tehran's unfolding struggle. This is not just a story about one city or one nation. It is a glimpse into a future where water scarcity becomes a defining challenge for millions around the globe. Tehran's experience may shape how other countries prepare for similar emergencies. The next few weeks will be critical. Officials must stabilize supplies, calm public fears, and prevent widespread unrest. Engineers must work around the clock to repair infrastructure. And every resident must conserve as much water as possible. Whether Tehran avoids evacuation or faces a historic displacement will depend on how quickly these efforts succeed. For now, the situation remains tense and highly unpredictable. New announcements come daily, and the atmosphere in the city is filled with uncertainty. The hope is that the worst can be avoided, but the reality is stark. Tehran is facing one of the greatest challenges in its history, and the consequences will be felt for years to come. This crisis is a powerful reminder that water is not guaranteed, even in massive modern cities. Without sustainable management and long-term vision, Entire populations can suddenly find themselves on the brink. Tehran's story is unfolding in real time, and the world will be learning from it, whether the outcome becomes a warning or a blueprint for survival. If you found this deep explanation helpful, make sure to subscribe for more detailed breakdowns of global events and crises shaping our world today. Thank you for watching, and stay safe wherever you are.